Happy Friday the 13th, everyone! I'm the Ghostess, and there's no better way to celebrate the unluckiest day of the year than by marathoning one of the most well-known slasher film franchises ever made. But in case you don't have time to watch, 12 movies in one day, I'm here to recap every single Friday the 13th film for you, and in honor of the holiday, I'll do it in 13 minutes or less. So let's start the clock now! Okay, Friday the 13th Part 1. We open in 1958, where teenagers get horny singing Hallelujah, ditch the group and go off to have barn sex. Unfortunately, they're interrupted by a POV murderer who kills them both, resulting in the camp being closed. Years later, the owner's son, Steve Christie, decides to reopen Camp Crystal Lake with the help of a couple of guys, couple of gals, this androgynous fuck, and Kevin Bacon. Townie Crazy Ralph warns them that the place is a death curse, but they don't listen. One by one, the characters are isolated and taken out by a POV shot wearing a large jeweled ring and a plaid shirt. Meanwhile, people play strip Monopoly, and coffee is made. Main character Alice finds all her friends are dead and on display before running into Mrs. Pamela Voorhees, an old friend of the Christies whose son, Jason, drowned in the lake in 1957. Our killer, ladies and gentlemen. She snaps and goes split personality maniac on Alice, they battle it out, and it ends with a headless old lady. Alice canoes out to the middle of the lake where she's attacked by a seaweed-covered deformed child that the cops never found at the crime scene. Is he still out there or was it a dream? I'll give you one guess. On to Part 2. 2 months after her experience at Crystal Lake, Alice gets a visit from Mrs. Voorhees' head in her fridge and she gets got. 5 years after that, another camp on Crystal Lake is opening for the summer with a fresh new staff of victims. Crazy Ralph tells them, "You're all doomed," but nobody listens to Crazy Ralph and he gets garroted with barbed wire. This time around, we get a retconned urban legend about how Jason's body was never found, that he witnessed his mother's death and he's been roaming the area ever since. And finally, we get the classic hockey mask machete-wielding big over his head, pickaxe-wielding Jason. He sets a trap, slits this guy's throat, kills pointless nudity girl, gives handy-capable blade to the dome, spears the couple mid-coitus, and butcher knifes Sweaterface. The child psychology major ends up on a clumsy chase back to Jason's house, where she finds Mama Voorhees' murder altar and confuses the killer by pretending to be his mother and then knifes him in the back. But that can't keep old Bagface down. He just busts through the window, presumably kills the boyfriend and the adorable dog, and we cut to Ginny being loaded into the back of an ambulance, declared the sole survivor. Part 3. It's in 3D, so we get plenty of super necessary shots of things like popcorn popping and people playing with yo-yos. It's the day after Part 2, and Jason's still gonna hanker into murder, so he takes out the local grocers and heads back into the woods with our partying protagonists. We have main character Chris, her townie boyfriend, a horny couple, stoner couple, girl to balance out the diversity so it doesn't look like the only people of color in the cast are gang members, and the guy who likes to play morbid practical jokes that no one really knows why they invited. We find out Chris met Jason years earlier when he attacked and dragged her into the woods, and she woke up not remembering it happened, and I choose to believe he needed help building that murder altar. Some 80s punks show up for a hilarious attempt at arson, but only Jason can prevent forest fires, so they get got. Nerdy guy puts on a hockey mask and a wetsuit to scare a girl he likes, and Jason decides it's a pretty good look, so he steals the mask and wears it in every film since, even the one he isn't in. Yes. The mask's origin story is Jason steals it from a fat kid. Oh, and slits the guy's throat. He also harpoons the girl in the eye, slashes one guy in half crotch first, gives hammock girl a piercing, electrocutes Tommy Chong, skewers stoner girl with a hot poker, and stabs boyfriend, leaving only Chris to defeat Jason. They end up in a barn fight where she hangs him and axes him in the face until he finally falls down dead. Or is he? Part 4, the final chapter. It's been a big week for Jason. He's been murder spreeing for days now, but even a little being axed in the face can't keep him down. After being raised from the dead by a makeout session between a sleazy medical examiner and a reluctantly horny nurse, before the two get necks sawed and stabbed respectively, Jason heads on back to Crystal Lake to keep on a-killin'. We meet Corey Feldman, before he was a poor man's Charlie Sheen, living out in the woods with his mom, dog, and sister Trish. They're next door to a summer house being shared by 6 co-eds, including George McFly, who later meet the Doublemint twins, go skinny dipping, drink, watch vintage porn, and party. I mean, come on. How could Jason resist that? One by one, the partygoers get stabbed through a raft, somehow without it deflating, knifed in the junk, face smashed, thrown out a window, and stabbed. A camper seeking revenge for his sister from Part 2 ends up Jason Chow, Mom gets startled to death off screen, and I'm not clear what happened with the dog. Trish creates a diversion long enough for Lil Feldman to confuse Jason with his monster makeup before using the killer's own machete to repeatedly slash him to death, clearly scarring the boy for life. Jason is super dead though. For realsies this time. Part 5, A New Beginning. 10 years later, Tommy Jarvis has stopped being Corey Feldman and is being released from a mental hospital with severe PTSD from his encounter with Jason as a child. He's staying at a halfway house near Crystal Lake with a precocious kid, Dr. Dude and Dr. Blondie, goth chick, a ginger, a nymphomaniac couple, a stutterer, a fat kid, and the guy who immediately murders the fat kid? Tons of pointless side characters get their eyes gouged out. There will be boobs. Dr. Blondie drives the kid into town so he can visit his brother Joanna Man, taking Tommy with him. Tommy snaps when a townie gets in his face, and suddenly there's another rash of murders. All the bodies are found in Tommy's room, and then Jason bursts through the door, just Jasoning it up. The little boy rides an excavator like a badass to defend Dr. Blondie. She in turn fights Jason with a chainsaw, and then Tommy shows up to save the day? Even though it seems like Tommy was the next killer, he's actually the next Sidney Prescott, because when they Scooby-Doo Jason's mask off, it was old man paramedic with a rushed explanation at the end the whole time. Of course! Part 6, Jason Lives. So a year or so later, Tommy Jarvis digs up Jason's body to prove he's really dead, before inadvertently bringing him back to life with magic lightning. Jason's a zombie now from here on out. Don't bother suspending your disbelief, just deal with it. He murders his way through an office retreat paintball game, and even he seems surprised by his inhuman strength. Tommy tells police, but they think he's crazy, accuse him of every murder they discover, and repeatedly capture him while he repeatedly escapes. He catches the eye of the sheriff's rebel daughter, who's working at the newly opened Camp Crystal Lake, the renamed Camp Forest Green. Jason just murders to his black heart's content, flipping an RV, twisting off a camp counselor's head, folding cops in half, and just bloodying up the place. Tommy lures Jason out to the lake with such cunning tactics as calling him a pussy, sets the lake on fire so Jason will be forced to resurface so that Tommy can drown him, shut up, it makes sense, and then the rebel daughter motorboats Jason's face off, but not in the sexy way you're thinking. And this time, he's definitely dead. Part 7, The New Blood. So after accidentally killing her father with uncontrollable psychic powers years earlier, a teenage girl's therapist makes her return home so he can document how her emotions enhance her abilities, to help her face her guilt and grief. She has telekinesis, pyrokinesis, psychic visions of murders, and can apparently resurrect the dead with her mind. Enter zombie waterlogged Jason Voorhees, bursting from Crystal Lake and immediately warming up on some campers, using a sleeping bag to smash one to death against a tree before setting sights on the partygoers next door. Maybe it's just strict MPAA edits, but the brief death scenes make it seem like people are really easily killed, as Jason decapitates, circular saws, slashes, stabs, and shark attacks his victims. When Psychic Girl finds out her mom was killed, we get a super-powered battle worthy of an X-Men sequel, where someone with essentially the powers of Wolverine fights someone with essentially the powers of Jean Grey. Jason gets electrocuted, set on fire, and exploded, until our heroine resurrects her dead father to chain Jason back up at the bottom of the lake. Oh yeah! Part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan. Or, more accurately, Jason rides a boat. So the graduating class of Crystal Lake High School is taking a cruise ship to New York City, and surprise, Jason is brought back to life by a weird convenience and he's hitching a ride with them. This one is another doozy of a plot, but not nearly as interesting as Part 7. We mainly follow Rennie, who keeps having weird visions of some ghost kid who tried to drown her in the lake when she was little, who can't be Jason because he's not deformed and is a ghost instead of a zombie. Meanwhile, Jason uses a guitar, a hot coal, a piece of mirror, his own hands, gravity, and of course his trusty machete to cut the cast down to a single lifeboat's worth as the ship goes under. But don't worry, a rowboat on the ocean can totally make it all the way to New York City. And boy do we get to see the sights. Times Square, the dock, heroin addict rapists, some diner, subways, the sewer, all the splendors Manhattan has to offer. Jason ends up melted by toxic waste and washed away by sewage. And as he dies, lightning strikes Lady Liberty, which means she's Jason now, leading us to... Part 9! Jason becomes the Statue of Liberty. Jason goes to hell. Jesus Christ, okay. The FBI trap Jason and blow him to pieces. A medical examiner gets hypnotized by Jason's heart and eats it, causing soul sparks to magic into his body and demonically possess him. Still with me? So a cowboy bounty hunter Jason Voorhees expert and nonsense expositor explains that Jason needs to shivers a parasite soul into other bodies, causing the old ones to disintegrate with the end goal of transferring into a Voorhees woman to be reborn. He kills his sister, yeah he has a sister, and heads to his niece, yeah and a niece, thwarted by the hero efforts of her baby daddy, yeah and there's a baby. While possessing other characters, he kills his way through the cops, diner patrons, and anyone else until his soul slug spirit breaks free and crawls into his dead sister's uterus, which somehow immediately restores him back to his original form. Whose fucking idea was this? Based on info from the Necronomicon, the niece uses a Jason Voorhees ceremonial dagger, which causes him to be dragged back to hell, leaving only his mask behind, which Freddy Krueger is kind enough to grab for him. Which brings us to Freddy vs. Jason, so technically the 11th to come out, but it's chronologically next. Freddy Krueger finds Jason's soul in hell, realizes if Jason kills douchebags on Elm Street, people will blame Freddy, restoring his power, so Freddy brings him back to life. At first everything's all good and the plan is working until Jason killblocks Freddy, pissing the nightmare demon off. Meanwhile, a group of teens, including a Destiny's Child, realize they can defeat Freddy with experimental sleep drugs, but Freddy possesses a stoner, destroys the drugs, and dopes up Jason so they can dream fight. So the kids decide to kidnap Jason's sleeping body and drive it back to Crystal Lake, so when they pull Freddy into the real world, Jason has home field advantage. The two duke it out in the dream world, then at Crystal Lake, and then the neutral playing field of construction site for some reason. It ends with them not being able to kill each other because they're basically immortal hell monsters, so it's entertaining but pointless. Aw man, Jason X time! Flash forward to 2455. So imagine someone had an Alien sequel and just changed a couple of words around and went, sure, this works, why not? Jason in space! So a group of student scientists take Jason's cryogenically frozen body on board a spaceship, and the second he thaws out, he starts hacking the crew apart. Soldiers on board try to hunt him down, but they get got. This scares one student into crashing the escape pod into the ship, killing her and dooming everyone else on board. Jason really can't take credit for that, she's just an idiot. They send for a rescue beacon while fakey Xander Harris gives his fembot a Matrix makeover, and she kills Jason, but the ship's nanobots rebuild him because they have the technology. Everyone dies until it's just fake Xander, Fembot's decapitated head, and a lady from yesteryear, who distract Jason with a hologram of sexy teens before he gets exploded into space and rocket-manned by the head soldier back to the planet's atmosphere, burning up on re-entry and landing near a lake in the woods. Did I miss one? Right, the remake. It's not really a remake. Reboot? Reimagining? Do-over? Feels mostly like a modern sequel, only if parts 2 through 10 didn't exist. Mrs. Voorhees gets killed again in 1980, and we cut to present-day 2009, making Jason a 63-year-old man, where he kills some campers, kidnaps one that looks like his mom, and brings her corpses. Meanwhile, a bunch of friends go partying in the woods, they're all inconsequential to the plot, and they all get got. Eventually, the kidnapped girl's brother finds her, rescues her, Jason gives chase, and they hang him with a chain that feeds into a wood chipper and machete him in the chest. The movie ends on a classic nonsense cliffhanger where he bursts from the lake at the last frame. And thus, our marathon of Friday the 13th concludes, awkwardly on a 12th film. But I wouldn't start smoking weed and skinny dipping at Crystal Lake yet, because as I've clearly shown, Jason never stays dead for long. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe. Follow me at Spooky Ghostess on Twitter, and to see more of my thoughts on the films, visit theghostessreviews.com. Boo for now.